Joining me now, the former Democrat congressman from Ohio, Dennis Kucinich. He was the chairman of the Congressional Investigative Subcommittee that investigated the banks after the 2008 financial meltdown. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. What do you make of the news that John Stumpf, CEO of Wells Fargo, suddenly resigning over the fake bank account scandal?
It's no surprise. I would expect that you'll see more of the top brass from Wells Fargo stepping down. They're facing multiple investigations for violations of banking regulations at state levels as well as the federal level, for fraud in terms of the Justice Department, and the public image of the bank has taken a serious hit because of the violation of public trust. So millions of Americans have been adversely affected, and it's really important for there to be accountability right at the top.
You know, Congressman Kucinich, Elizabeth Warren called for a criminal investigation of John Stumpf.
Well,
what do you think of that?
She's right. It's warranted. I think that, you know, what they did was fraudulent. And not only that, but it had implications for individuals. I mean, they could be facing millions of lawsuits. But as far as criminal activity, absolutely. I don't think there's any question about it.
So the DOJ, the Elizabeth Warren should step in. Also, the SEC about whether or not, you know, the CEO or the bank knowingly misled investors by not disclosing the fact that they knew about this fake accounts problem dating back to maybe 2013, right? Right,
and I think, you know, when you book that kind of activity as a company, and it's not true, that's certainly going to affect the stock of the bank, and so you're probably going to see a dramatic reappraisal of Wells Fargo's position in the financial community, with a real correction of their stock price based on a deep dive into the real numbers that the bank's operating on.
Now, Congressman, now we're in the, of course, the political season, a month away to the election. Hillary Clinton certainly made a lot of money giving speeches on Wall Street. Do you expect either of the candidates to step up and say, you know what, this was out of control, what happened here, and we should break up the big banks?
I think they're both going to have to, both of the major candidates are going to have to address this. Hillary Clinton will be pressed to do it because of the contributions which she received from banks. Donald Trump is no favorite of the big banks. I would expect him to weigh in, and, you know, people could come back at him and criticize him for his own business dealings. But this is a clear case of fraud on the part of a major bank. And, you know, and earlier in the show, there, you know, someone had mentioned, are these banks, it may have been you, are these banks now too big to regulate? You know, we're told they're too big to fail, and are they too big to regulate? Can anyone regulate them? Apparently, they're not self-regulating, because Wells Fargo is an object case in how banks, left to their own designs, will do things that can dramatically injure the public interest.
Congressman, you know, we do have all sorts of regulatory bodies that did pop up and were created after the financial crisis. The regulators didn't catch this fraud. It was the LA Times who caught it, right?
Right. So, you know, look.
So why would we have even more regulators trying to fix a problem they didn't catch?
Well, you know, you make a good point. Here's the problem, though. Our political system is set up so that regulatory bodies, which are appointed by elected officials, have the ability and can be corrupted. They can look the other way. They can be slow to enforce. So I don't think that enforcement in and of itself is wrong. I think that the idea of an honor park system with respect to banks should leave.
Yeah, but how do you do that?
skeptical.
Sorry, Congressman, just stay with me. David, how would you do that? We'd literally have to have a regulator sitting next to your chair in the office, right?
A couple of things. First of all, I'm sure.
Sorry, Congressman, we have David Aslan.
Well, Dennis Kucinich, I'm sure, would join me in part of this, which is we have a Federal Reserve that is bringing down artificially these rates to zero. As a result of that, banks are going out of their way to find ways of getting interest. Of course, a lot of what Wells Fargo is doing is what banks all over are doing, finding little mechanisms to charge interest rates higher than they otherwise would be. And of course, as anybody knows, if you borrow on your credit card, you get higher interest. That's just one of the problems that we have, Dennis. And I know you agree with that, right?
Respond. I not only agree with you, but we have to remember that the Fed is also a regulatory body,
right?
And that they have failed time and again. In Cleveland, where I'm from, they missed the fact that National City Bank was booking by the tens of thousands no-doc and low-doc loans that were then became collateralized debt obligations. And led to the subprime.
And the Fed has missed on so many things. They're bad prognostications. But I got to ask one thing, Dennis. The other thing that the Fed is doing now is which happened as a result of the financial crisis, is giving banks an open access to the Federal Reserve windows, allowing them to borrow all this money that is supposed to just be for commercial banks. That is, when we separated the commercial and the financial banks, we got into this mess. Wouldn't you agree that that was where this mess started?
Well, if you're talking about the act that Congress did that caused the banks to be able to speculate, yes, that is a problem.
Yeah.
Banks should not be speculating, and the public shouldn't have to stand behind banks who speculate. That's why I voted against the bailout.
Got it. Congressman, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Sorry, we're coming up against a hard break.